Hey y'all, CB here again at NBS Welding. We're up here at the ball field. You know, I have people every once in a while. They say, "What kind of work you do mostly?" I don't mostly do anything anymore. You know, there was a time when you'd say, "Well, what kind of work you do mostly?" And I'd have to say, I'm a welding contractor for the drilling industry, because when I was a welding contractor for the drilling industry, that's all I could do. Now that I serve the community and pretty much work for whoever and whatever, I get into some of the most interesting stuff. And here we are at the high school where I went to high school in my hometown, and we're working on some bleachers. We got a situation here. Now let's take a look what we got. These bleachers here at the baseball field had wood on them just like this. And it got really rotten. It was in bad shape. They've had some volunteers and some people willing to do some work had come up and taken the rotten boards off. And they had talked about replacing the boards. Another thing that happened in the middle of this, though, was the athletic director had ended up talking to the insurance company. And the insurance company had a major complaint with these bleachers, and the complaint being that these old style bleachers that have the opening in between the seat and the place where you put your feet, it's an area where a kid could fall through there and fall down in below the bleachers. And the insurance company said, you know, newer bleachers have a piece that fills that area in and prevents that from being such an issue. So the county had looked into just, you know, at that point they thought, well, these old style bleachers we got, the insurance company isn't going to let us use them. So we'll have to buy new bleachers. So they got a quote on a set of bleachers for this baseball field, and the quote was $300,000. Another interesting thing happened right there at that same time. There's a very successful man in West Virginia named Ike Morris who donated a bunch of bleachers to the county, to Upshur County. Now, I don't know the origin of the bleachers that he donated, but we've got them all here and I'll show them to you. My assumption is that they got taken out of some place. They got tore out of some place to be replaced, or maybe something else was built in their place. But luckily, instead of them being scrapped, they're here. Now, let me show you the extremely interesting thing about this situation. Now, if we look at the bleachers that we've got right here, that the county has in place, these bleachers had boards that were 9.5 inches wide, basically 2 by 10s. All these donated bleachers, piles of them that the county got for free, have panels on them like this right here. These panels appear to be 9.5 inches wide. Well, ain't that a coinky dink? And there's quite a bit of them. The next thing is, if you look at the difference in elevation, see, you'd have a seat that's up here. Then you'd have a plank down here. And that plank would be about 1.5 inches or 2 inches. And what you got, pretty much, you got 16 or 17 inches or so between the seat and the foot plank that you'd walk on. That's the area that the insurance company has the issue with a kid falling through. Let's look again at the donated stuff. See this galvanized sheet steel? Ain't that a coinky dink? There's a bunch of these panels on these bleachers that looks like could be used to fill in that gap. So the next thing is, you know, how's this going to work? Well, I don't know. But I tell you what, we're going to try and use this stuff. We're going to try and do something with it here. We're going to try and make something work. And the only thing is, I think that you could possibly get into so much drilling and bolting and screwing that it would be a nightmare to connect all this together. But considering what we got for free here, I'm thinking about taking these parts, setting them in place, and just tacking them. I think I could probably weld all this stuff together, which would obviously be way faster and more efficient than trying to figure out how to bolt the stuff. And there's going to be places where things have to be spliced together where there's not a brace, you know, to bolt the two together. Most of this donated stuff's 15 feet long, and these bleachers are 30. So there's going to be a splice in the center, but you know, you're splicing the center, it might not line up perfect. But if you're welding it, it doesn't matter if it does or not. We just got to start taking stuff apart, putting things together, and see what happens here. And that's exactly what we're getting ready to do. We're getting some rain. I'm not going to try and set up a tripod. I don't know how much pouring rain we're going to get. I'll just tell you what's going on here. I started taking that first one apart. And I got a couple panels that I could set up here. I had them flipped over the way they go. And then I realized if I was going to weld these together, this is where I'm talking about how the bleachers are 30 foot long and the ones that are donated are 15 foot. So we got a splice in the center. But the bracketry on the 30-foot bleachers doesn't give any support in the center. So the center of these is going to have to you'd have to either fabricate a bracket to hold it or weld it together. And I think welding it together is going to be the fastest way to do that. But what I'm realizing is that if I'm going to do that, I need to do it before I fasten it. Or at least that's the easiest way, because the part that really needs to be welded is the bottom. Whether you weld the top or not is irrelevant. As far as standing on it, the strength would be at the bottom. And if you put this upside down and weld it together and then flip it over, that's going to be way easier than trying to get up under here and weld galvanized steel overhead. So, this just being the beginning of this job, what I'm doing is I'm going to splice this first set of planks together here, and we're just going to see how it goes. We're getting some sprinkling. It's not raining hard enough to bother me, but I'm not going to set up a tripod and try to do a lot of filming yet. Maybe we can get to that later, but I'm going to keep going with this idea, and we'll see where we end up. Check back with you directly. Welded that together on the bottom and flipped it over. I was running about 85 amps with a 1/8 inch 5P plus pipe rod. It did great. No issue with the galvanized, and I'm not real concerned there. That went great. Got this thing flipped over, it does need clamped down to get it perfectly straight. And I went and got one of the backing panels to keep the kids from falling through. And what I see when I put that up there is that it's bigger than it needs to be, which is good. Whenever I put it here, so I don't want that up that high. I would like that to sit right down on the bracket. The way it's hitting down there is keeping it from going down any farther. What that means is we got more metal than we need, and that's great. I'd always rather have more. If I got to cut a little notch in the bottom of that so it can go down 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, that's no problem. That's way easier than having to extend it and make it bigger than what it is. Something I just noticed, and I don't know why it's only going up this side, but there's some plates here that I think are just in the way. See, that plate right there is bolted on there with carriage bolts, and there's a couple right there. All the way up this side, there's extra plates like that I think those extended the bracketry this direction a little bit. But what I can tell from my length, when I take this and splice 2 of these together, it's giving us the length we need. Where this is reaching over to here, that's perfectly fine. These brackets that are carriage bolted on here, running up this side, it just looks like they extend that bracketry over 2 inches. Maybe to make something reach that didn't reach. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. But I can tell we don't need it for what we're doing. And I'm just going to get the torch and just cut these carriage bolts off. I can tell by the way that these carriage bolts are rusting. They're not stainless bolts, so a torch will whack them off there. And that's going to be the fastest way to get rid of them plates. Just get that out of my way. Them nasty buggers got a nest built inside of these bleachers. It ain't very big, but they're working on it. There's about to be a torch eviction here of wasps. Torched them plates off the end, burned up a wasp nest, got those guys evicted. I was looking at how this plank is here and how the sheet metal fill-in pieces were going to work, and I was sort of realizing that probably the best way to do this was to start at the top and go down. Otherwise, you're going to be putting things in your way. It sucks that there's less to walk on, but for the work, you want that top fill-in piece would go before this goes in, and just come on down the way. And that's went good. I like how it fit. What I got to do is I go down through there, I got to notch those. I'm notching them around that. And the only thing that's unfortunate is they don't make it. As you can see, got to have an 8-inch piece in there to fill that in. So I got one of the pieces took apart that was really badly damaged. And what I did is I took the saw and I cut me a bunch of those. Probably more than I needed. Got them marked, took a measurement. I took the 8-inch Milwaukee saw and got some of those cut. So I'm going to take one of those and put in to fill in that piece, and we'll get it tacked in there and see how that goes. Well, for a first day on this, I think we got proof of concept. I think we got proof that these parts will fit. These parts will turn these bleachers into bleachers that'll last and fix the problem that the insurance company has with the opening. I've made some realizations that I think are important. One of the main ones being all of these upper panels where you sit are going to need to be welded on before these foot panels are welded. I was noticing, when I was welding this to the piece back here, think about welding that to right there with this here. That'd be tough. That'd be damn near impossible to get vision with your welding shield slam right against that thing. It's only a couple inches. I don't think there'll be any issue at all welding those foot planks in dead last. You can go under the bleachers and weld those. Somewhere where you got all this area right here that the foot plank lays on that angle iron. I could get up under there and weld that. I'll figure out how to. I definitely need to bring a different, like a pipe clamp, to pull this back tight against here. I don't think there's a welder or a woodworker on the planet that ever complained about having too many clamps. I'm actually going to have to put some of my shop clamps in the super service truck for this job, probably, which I don't normally do. There's a lot of clamps I like to leave at the shop, but sometimes that happens where this is something where you couldn't have too many clamps. But it's a good realization. The first realization I made that I think is going to be helpful is realizing that it's best to start up here at the top and go down. I think if I would have started at the bottom and went up like I began doing, I started out 180 degrees backwards on this. I did. The first thing I thought I was going to do was put down a foot plank at the absolute bottom, and when I sat that there, I was getting a visualization of how this vertical piece was going to go on that down there, and I was realizing, well, that's going to have something to do with this and something to do with that, and if I put that on there at the bottom, I'm kind of putting it in the way of the next one and whatever, and I realized that I think you want to start at the top. Put this on first, then put the seat on, and then I'll continue down through here, putting the fill-in piece on in the seat, the fill-in piece in the seat, and then the absolute last thing I think will be the foot plank here that you walk on. Main thing is it's gonna work. And one of the volunteers that came and took this wood off here this past weekend has stopped by, and I talked to him, and I told him, if those guys wanted to, they could get wrenches and take some bleachers apart, like I did here, taking the donated bleachers, disassembling them, and putting the planks and the sheet metal and the different things in different piles, because obviously the more someone else did that, the more time I could spend welding the pieces on. If they don't get around to doing that, that's fine. I'll do it. I'll take it apart. But I'm just figured I'd tell the guy, and sounded like he might be able to get some help, and they might do that. So anyway, be back tomorrow, and we'll keep going on this, and we'll see how it goes. Hey y'all, going here on this next day. Got a flashy new shirt on. Look at that bright stuff. That's crazy. Getting another day out of the overalls though. They wasn't too stinky bad, so I threw them back on there and give them another go. Now, what we're into first thing this morning, I got out the Arc Captain, my Arc Captain MiG 200, and I've set it up with some flux core. This is the flux core that Arc Captain sent me when they sent me the MiG 200. It's an 030 gasless flux core wire. If you didn't see my review on the Arc Captain MiG 200, you might want to check that out, especially if you're thinking of buying a welding machine. These reviews are a great way to get an idea if that's what you want before you spend money. I am an Arc Captain affiliate. I'm very impressed with their products. There's a link in the description of my videos that'll take you to my Arc Captain link. And in the description, there'll also be my promo code that'll get you a discount and a gift if you're purchasing a welder from Arc Captain. And that helps the channel. The reason that I've got out the Arc Captain is I'm wondering how this flux core wire would do on that thin galvanized steel. So we want to give that a try. I don't think I would do it if it wasn't for the Arc Captain. The other means by which I have to run flux core wire would be an Lincoln LN25 wire feeder, like that. Those feeders that is nothing but a wire feeder. So you have to run welding cable to the feeder. The great big welding cable, you have to run it to the feeder. And you're using your constant voltage power from your engine drive welder when I use that. And that's a big heavy feeder, and I wouldn't want to pack that thing around up and down those bleachers. The Arc Captain MiG 200 is not just a feeder, but also the power source. The only cable that I need is the cable that I'm powering it with to plug it into the Trailblazer, using the Trailblazer as a generator. And it's so lightweight, especially with a small spool in it, it's going to be easy to pack around on those bleachers. I ran some welds yesterday doing my tacking on the galvanized steel with a 1/8 inch 5P plus pipe rod, and I'll tell you a couple things I tried when I was doing that. I tried both polarities. I did it electrode positive, which is what I normally run my 5P plus on, but I tried electrode negative too. Both ways worked fine. I couldn't tell much difference. I did not try a 3/32 5P plus pipe rod. That may be an option too, to go down a size, because I did get some issues with burn through, and I didn't leave any holes in it. Anywhere I burned through a little bit, I'd patch it back, but I was having to jog and pause, and that slows you down. If you got to wait for something to cool, that slows you down. So one thing's going to be trying the flux core wire on that. Maybe that'll work out. And of course, now the flux core wire runs on electrode negative, so the hot side would be the material, and we'll see how that has an effect on the fact that we're welding galvanized steel. The other thing we're going to be doing to get ready for today is grabbing a bunch of extra clamps. I'm just going to get a bucket and grab a bunch of the shop clamps, and we'll take those. And this is definitely one of the jobs where we could use a lot of clamps. We'll get things loaded up in the super service truck. We'll get up there and get to work. Let's go. Turned out to be a pretty nice day. We've had rain showers here and there, but overall we're getting done what we can. The updatification situation, there's been a lot of disassemblification. I've been taking a lot of stuff apart to get parts, and I got parts racked over here. I got planks over here. I've taken. I realize in the grand scheme of things, the best order is to put these risers on in between the seat and the walk plank. Very first thing. That's step one. Step two would be to put on the seat plank. Them babies right there. So all of these, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 more rows. All of these need to be to this point before you even think about putting any of your walk planks on. Now I've thrown some planks up here as a means for me to walk around, and I've clamped them. I've clamped them at the end, and pretty much going by what I've learned, you know, to try to make this better and more efficient as I go. The one thing I'm definitely going to want to do is, since I found out there yesterday that the riser panels aren't long enough to reach from one end to the other without adding that little piece in there. So I've got several of those pieces cut and ready. And what I can do, I think that'll be a slight improvement. I'm not going to cut this apart, but on all the rest of them, I'm going to put that filler piece in the center. So that'll be a little bit more even. My planks will go, you know, I'll put 1, 2, and then I'll go to the other side and put 1, 2, and then I'll deal with the gap in the middle. But what I'm going to do right now to finish out the day is going to be some grinding. Whenever I welded on the seat and the riser yesterday, I realized the seat on the back gets welded right here. The riser goes over the edge of this and gets welded right here. So on all of these where those parts are going to land, I'm going to run around here with a grinder, and I'm going to knock down some of that zinc, grind it a little bit, and that way there's not as much of that zinc to burn through when I install the stuff. You know, and that would be a hassle going a little at a time, but I'm just going to get a grinder, and I'm going to go across here and try to do all of them, you know. And I think in a short period of time, that little bit of grinding will help me out enough when I go to welding that it's worth the time I'm putting into it. So that's what I'm going to do now, and that'll probably finish out the day. All this rain and stuff's been crazy now. It's beautiful. Sun's out. No dark clouds nowhere. The white puffy clouds. Cotton balls in the sky. But let's get grinding. So here's what we got. We've got the 1/4 inch nuts, 5/16 nuts, 5/16 washers, 5/16 carriage bolts, 1/4 inch carriage bolts, 1/4 inch washers. These are elastic stop nuts that were on, they're 5/16 and they went on these Allen headed 5/16 bolts. I don't think I'm going to use any of these. The carriage bolts is what I plan on using. But I went ahead and separated them. There was a whole bunch of self-tapping screws that I threw away. They've already self-tapping screws, once they've been run, they're pretty much done. But here's the deal now is I'm going to be, I don't know if I need the washers. I got them separated. I'm going to take them. I'm going to put the 1/4 inch carriage bolts with the 1/4 inch washers in there like that. The 5/16 carriage bolts with the 5/16 washers like that. I've got my 1/4 inch nuts and 5/16 nuts. So that's my little kit right there to go. Those I'll be using. This stuff I don't need this. I won't throw it away. I might use it someday, but I'm not going to be using it on this project. And I guess I'll just say I'm not crazy about elastic stop nuts. This is a great concept, and they do. I mean, I can see how the elastic stop nut keeps a nut from backing off. But I haven't had enough trouble with standard nuts backing off when they're correctly tightened to put up with the hassle of this. And the big hassle of this is when you take one of these and you start it on a bolt and that bolt's a little bit longer than it needs to be, and you want to just finger handy thread the nut as far as you can go, you can't do it. You got to run these with a tool the whole way because of that elastic. And like I said, I can see how the elastic gripping there maybe would keep them from backing off. But if a nut's tightened correctly, I don't have trouble with them backing off. So I see no reason to put up with the hassle it creates. But we've got our hardware separated. We're going to throw that in the super service truck and head out to the job. Let's go. Well, here we are. And big realization that I made there yesterday. Was thinking about the riser sections. I think I've already said, like, I'm realizing that I probably want all the riser sections in place first, and then the seat sections, and then the last thing would be the bottom planks that you walk on. Here's the thing I realized about the risers. Whenever I did these risers, you can see where what I'm doing, I'm having to notch that a little with a grinder. Little notch right there. So the thing about this notch, what I'm realizing is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows here that I'm going to be putting risers on. First thing, put them on, tack them up. Got to notch them first. Well, that notch is probably going to be exactly the same, as they go down. So that means that rather than just marking individually like I obviously did on the first one, what I could do is I could get a mark on one, make a cut, and then copy that 3 more times. That's something that's going to, help with the efficiency of what I'm doing here. The other thing that I want to do, just pretty much to make things more even, is, I found out they're not long enough to go from one end to the other in 4 pieces without that little add-on piece. And like I said, I cut several of those little add-on pieces. So what I'm going to do is put the add-on piece in the center. Instead of, I'm not going to cut this one off and change it, but now that I've learned that there's going to be 2 risers on the right, 2 risers on the left, I'll do the 2 risers on the right, 2 risers on the left. There'll be a gap in the middle, and the center is where I'll put that little add-on piece. So let's go. Got the top of these risers tacked up. We're looking good. Like I said, I have the filler end pieces in the center now. I like that better. Just went 1, 2, 1, 2. Doing the notch like I said. Got to notch that out. Worked really good to get a mark on one and then set it on top of the other 3. And, you know, that saved me from marking them individually. That was another one of them little tricks you find as you go that's going to save you some time. These are welded on the top. Of course, the bottom's kind of flopping. The bottom of them will be getting welded to the walk planks, and that stiffens all that up. But the next step on this is going to be putting the seat sections on. Because like I said, you want your walk planks need to be dead last. If the walk planks were on there right now, it'd be nearly impossible to weld the seats to the bracketry. So that's going to be the next thing. I'm going to start bringing planks over and putting on the seat sections and getting that tacked up. Something I want to make note of, I did that first weld splice, and I was saying earlier how I separated some hardware because I think I'm going to be bolting these together in the center actually instead of welding them. And I want to show you how it's going to work out. Some of these brackets have these holes. I was welding on that first one. I welded the bottom of that bracketry together that's bolted. It's a bolt on end caps, what it is. But when I realized they have these holes where they're meant to be bolted together, that's making me want to do that for a lot of reasons. That is one part where, since the holes are already made in there, it's going to be pretty efficient to bolt that together in the middle. The next thing is, whenever I welded that first one together, I wanted to weld it together upside down and then flip it over. I didn't want all this upside down overhead welding on the galvanized metal up under the bleachers. Whenever I spliced that one together and flipped it over, when it's 30 feet long, it's too limber, it's too hard to handle. It's not really an issue because of the weight. It's just an issue because it's so limber that things are hard to move around. Now, if I take these planks in their 15-foot sections and put them up there one at a time and pay attention so that I've got bolt hole bracketry that lines up in the middle, because obviously, like, this end is a cap that doesn't have holes. But what that's going to mean is that as far as handling the stuff, I can just handle a half plank or a 9.5 inch wide, 15-foot long plank at a time. And that's not that floppity and hard to handle. So there's going to be a benefit there too. Come around the side here, you can see what these rear welds are like. be welding across that angle to the seat. That's what we'll be doing on the back. I'm gonna get out the MiG 200 and try flux coring that overhead, see how that goes. At the end of the third day on this, feel like we're getting somewhere. So that's definitely the right combination of assembly. Put the risers on first, then put the seat on. You can reach up from the bottom and weld the bottom of the seat. You can reach up from the bottom and make these welds. See, for most of that I was standing down there, and if these walk planks were in place, you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd be really cramped for space. So I think what I'll be doing now is I'll be taking 9.5 inch wide, 15-foot long planks as singles. And I'll be putting one, shoving it back against the bottom of that riser and getting it clamped and welding it down to the angle support that runs across there, and also welding it back to the riser. And you can see, like, the places where the riser is not straight, that piece should straighten it out. I'll have to do some more disassembly. I don't have enough planks. So tomorrow I'll be taking some more bleachers apart, you know, to get the parts. So we're getting somewhere. It's looking good. It's going to work. Moving things around here this morning and getting set up. I've racked up some of these panels, and some of the stuff I had laying on the ground I've straightened up a little bit. I've made a realization, another realization that I want to share with you about the foot planks here. What I had planned on doing, putting these foot planks, you know, shoving them, clamping them back against this riser, and I was going to weld that real similar to the way that I did, you know, stitch welds on the top of the riser. Now, obviously, to me, on the top of the riser, where, you know, you've got a bracket right here that I set that riser on, and if you put a bolt down through there, then this wouldn't set down flat on it. It would set on the bolt. That would create a gap. And I'm also seeing how between here and there, that riser being welded to that seat, that riser's making that seat a lot stiffer. When I step on that first one that's not welded, and then I step on the second one that is, I can definitely tell a difference. Now, when we're getting here to looking at the bottom, that's not pushed up there tight, and it needs to be. But I was originally thinking about having stitch welds down through there, a lot like the way I got these stitch welds on the top. Here's the thing about doing that. If I got them stitch welds like that, the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to clamp everything tight. And a lot of these risers are, not all of them, but you know, a bunch of them are bent. And something that I've realized is if I got to clamp them, that's sort of, it's two processes. You'd have to clamp them, then you'd have to weld them. Let me show you where some of these are bent. These areas, like right here, there's quite a bow in that. It's, you know, it's kind of tweaked out. This is a thin enough material where all this can be fixed. All this can be squeezed where it needs to be. I'm not worried about it. But here's what I've realized. This might be an instance where welding is not the right thing to do, because if I go to these spots where there's, you know, a place that's bowed out a lot, and I drill a hole right here, pre-drill a hole in this part, and then run a self-tapping screw into the back side, if I run a self-tapping screw into the back side of that plank, it's holding and clamping. You know, we're going to have to see, I'm going to try that on one of these and see if I can squeeze that together with the screws without clamping it, because if I can, those screws are going to be my clamp and my tack, killing two birds with one stone. Now, if we look, the way these were screwed when they were assembled before, there was one on the end, there's one there, and then probably another one on the end. So there was probably 4 screws for every 7.5 foot panel. I could easily have more screws in it than that, and it wouldn't take that long. So, you know, I'm a welder. I want to weld stuff together, but if screwing it together is the right thing to do, I'm going to do that. I work with all methods. I work with all materials. You know, if I'm building a foundation for a house, I'm not going to refuse to lay block. I'll lay brick, block, tile, pour concrete, cement parge, hang sheetrock, tape and mud, finish sheetrock, paint. I do water plumbing, drain plumbing, wiring, electrical. You know, if somebody asks me, what kind of work do you do? I do the kind of work that needs done, whatever it takes. And if screwing this instead of welding it's the right thing to do, then by golly, that's what we're going to do. The one thing we're into right now is I'm out of planks. I've got to disassemble some parts. So that's just labor, and I ain't afraid of that either. So let's go. Let's get some parts to work with. the screwing the stuff together is working. So you can see, like, going down the back of here, especially where it was a little bit warped, the screws are doing good, pulling everything together and holding it. And actually ended up, I thought I was going to weld that part where the walk planks connected to the structure, but I've put some screws in, drilled and screwed, and I'm happy with the way that's going too. We come around here, kind of give you an idea, just an update on how far along this is pretty much what it'll look like with the planks that you walk on being twice as wide. And the planks that you sit on is just a single plank. And then, of course, the riser section to keep that would keep a kid from falling through that part. So if you look down here, you can see where I've got the rest of these, the second plank to put in. So what I'm doing is I'm going down through and I'm getting this outer second plank in place and screwing it in first, and then I'll grab some more planks and finish filling this in. Bopped my head a couple times while I was underneath here working. Reminded me that was a hard hat area. I cuss my hard hat a lot of times, but in certain scenarios you need it. And working up underneath of here and not worrying about bopping your head or jamming your head into a screw or something, maybe the corner of a piece of angle iron, you know, you need that protection. So I'm gonna keep going. Upper section here of this first one's pretty much done. Commissioner came up and took a look. It was good to see him. I hadn't seen him for a long time. He come up, took a look. He's happy with the way everything's going. We're going to keep going on this. And I just got a text from him. We had talked about how it was helpful that the volunteers, a lot of the dads had come up and removed the rotten boards on this upper section and left the boards on the bottom. Leaving the boards on the bottom like they did and tearing them off the top was perfect for me. It saved me the labor of taking the rotten boards off the top where the seats and walk planks are. But by having the old boards on the bottom, you know, that was something for me to work off of and walk on while I was working here. And it was also nice to have this wood where a lot of these riser planks, you know, the sheet metal was bent. And I was using this wood. I would lay the plank down and bash on the riser panel to straighten it out with my hammer, and that wooden walkway was perfect for that. But now that this is done, it's time to tear this off. And we've also got the other one over there, which is identical to this one. We'll be doing the same thing over there that we're doing over here. So Sam texted me just a second ago and said that this more wood will be torn off by Monday. We're creeping up on the weekend here, and it sounds like he's gotten a hold of some of the dads, the volunteers, and they were willing to take some of the boards off, which is great. I'll be coming up tomorrow, and my thing probably for tomorrow is going to be disassembling more of the donated parts, so I have parts to work with. And yeah, we're looking good. So we might have to try this. We might have to try this out before we go any further. Give these bleachers a test run. Looks like we're gonna get a little rain. So where we're at, right here, this is the other set of bleachers, and my plan is to do the top section of it. Then I'll step back and do the bottom section of that one, and then come over and do the bottom section of this one. That leaves them guys, the dads are tearing the wood off for me, and they're leaving the wood on the bottom. That gives me a way to, it gives me a means to get up there, and the wood's good to beat and bash on the bent pieces. So what I did today, I've done a lot of disassembly. I've been taking a bunch of stuff apart, and we're in a dugout. Something just happened with my phone that never happened before. That rain hit my phone and it shut me off. It stopped my filming. I wiped the screen off here and everything's fine now. We're out of the rain here in the dugout, but what I was telling you was I need 26 of those planks. I got 26 planks right there. 26 planks is what it takes to do the top section of one of those sets of bleachers. So what we done to the bleachers over here, as far as just the top, that takes 26 planks. So today I've been disassembling, and that was all I was doing, was taking stuff apart in preparation for reworking this other set of bleachers. If we look right here, there was that set there. There was a set about half taken apart right behind those bleachers. There was a full set way over there that I took the planks off of, and I still have the aluminum seats and the galvanized risers on there to take off, and we'll get to that later. But what I was trying to do was get these 26 planks removed and have enough of those planks to do the top section of these bleachers over here. And I've got them all right here. The way I've been carrying them, as I take them off over there, you know, I was packing them over and getting them about halfway. So there's still a ways to carry them, obviously, you know, to get them from right there to over there. But still quite a bit of just physical labor, you know, today. And the first few days I worked here, I had got to the end of my 5-day physical training split, and I knew the way my body was feeling, I was feeling like I was going to take a few days off of physical training. And when I do that, usually I try to do it where it's like this, where I've got a lot of work to do. So the first 3 days I worked on this job, I didn't do any physical training. I just come out here and worked real hard, long days on the job. Now, about 3 days without physical training is all I'm happy to do. So today was the first day back on my training split, and you know, my first day is a run day, my last day is a run day. The 3 days in between are weightlifting, weight training days. But usually on a run day, I like to foot travel 10 miles, and I'll run 5 miles and walk 5 miles. I didn't go that far this morning. I actually walked a little less than 2 miles and ran 3.7 miles this morning. By the time I was ready, it was 4:40 a.m. and I said, well, I'm going to do what I can do until 5:40 a.m. and that's all I'm going to do. And so that's what I ended up doing. And I'm glad I didn't. I probably would have put myself in an overtraining jam if I would have foot traveled 10 miles this morning, walking 5 and running 5, because of the amount of physical work, you know, disassembling these bleachers and packing the bleachers like I did today. You know, when I got that much physical labor to do, it's a good idea to, you know, if I'm going to train, to cut back a little bit. Now, it would be nice to do this with equipment, obviously, and there will be a telehandler here again, I'm sure. But here's the thing, let me show you. Those panels are 15 foot long, and there is not a 15-foot opening between here and them other set of bleachers. If you look at the kind of area we got between the ball field fence and the concession stand, there's not enough room. And I've looked around other ways, and there's just no way that you could get a big pile of them on the telehandler and pack them over there and put them right beside those bleachers. And we don't have the telehandler here full time anyway. That's something that we're going to get it here at times, and other times it's not going to be here. And right now it is not here. So, hey, we do a little physical labor. That's good for you. It's good for you physically, and it's good for you mentally too. Anyway, that's pretty much it for today. And looks like the rain's going to let up on me a little bit, and so it won't be so bad putting my tools away. So I better go get on that while it's slacked off, and whenever there's more to update with you, I'll get with you. First day of the second week on the bleachers. We've got full torch and power cord deployment. Because we're doing the bleachers that are a little bit of a distance out here. There's a couple things I'm doing. The grinding that galvanized. I got a power cord out, and I'm going to be using an angle grinder to grind the galvanized where I know I'm going to weld the riser and where I know I'm going to weld the seat. Also, we have those plates with the bolts. I talked about that when I burned them off over there, but I didn't shoot any video of it. Maybe I'll shoot video of it this time. Carriage bolts. They're regular steel carriage bolts on these plates. Nice thing to scarf them with a regular scarfing tip like this that doesn't a scarfing tip doesn't pierce. It doesn't pierce in and make a cut. It's more of a washing tip. So when you'll see me bring it to the head of this, and I can wash the head of that bolt off without really putting much heat on that plate at all. That's a little bit harder to do with a cutting tip. With a cutting tip, it wants to pierce, and you know, to make a nice cut on a piece of steel with oxygen acetylene, you want to pierce. That's why you want a nice clean tip when you cut with oxygen and acetylene, so that your a lot of people don't understand what you're cutting with when you cut with oxygen acetylene is actually a cone of oxygen that comes out of the torch tip. And the reason I say it's a cone is because the way it comes out of the torch tip, it's kind of spreading out. The further away from the torch tip it is, the bigger area the stream of oxygen takes up. And when your torch tip is really dirty, the stream of oxygen will come out of the tip and just spread right out. And you know, when it does that, it doesn't cut good. It doesn't pierce. That's why when your tip's clean, you use a tip cleaner and get your tip nice and clean. You'll hit the oxygen, you'll look at your torch flame, and what you'll see is you'll see two blue needles is what it looks like. Well, what you're actually seeing is the two sides of that cone of oxygen. When you see those two blue needles, they should blow out long and straight. And then when they do, you're going to have a torch tip that's going to cut really good for you because it's sharp. It's going to pierce. The washing tip does the total opposite of that. It spreads the heat out. It doesn't pierce. And for cutting off bolts, that's great. For cutting off welds, that's great. Rather than piercing, it's more of a washing effect. But so that's one thing we're going to do. We're going to be scarfing off these carriage bolts and grinding the galvanized here to make it a little bit better when I go to weld the risers and the seats on. That'll get some of the zinc out of the way and it'll weld a little bit better. So let's get to it. About to start wrapping up on this first day of the second week on this. Looking real good. We'll take a look here. Got the risers in. Got them tacked in. This involves, like I say, doing the notches first. Get all your notches cut. And then get your risers tacked in and then put in your fill-in piece in the center. Absolutely tickled to death with the R Captain MiG 200 and running the flux core on this thin galvanized. I didn't brush that weld off or anything. Maybe we'll brush some off and take a look at them later. Not fooling with that right now, but absolutely tickled to death with. And one of the things that I've said more than once about the R Captain flux core wire that they sent me is I said I like that wire, but it seems like it wants to run with a really short stick out. And I always like to run flux core with a lot more stick out. Something that I'm realizing, and we're going to find out for sure. But something that I'm realizing is that the Arc Captain flux core wire that they sent me is 030 diameter. And I don't run 030 diameter flux core much. As a matter of fact, I think the Arc Captain 030 flux core that they sent me that I'm burning in this machine is the only 030 flux core that I've run maybe ever, but definitely as long as I've been in business with you know, for myself since January of 2000. I know I never bought flux core that small. I think the smallest flux core that I've ever bought and used since I've been in business would have been 045. The reason I'm mentioning the diameter in relation to the amount of stick out is maybe there's a correlation there where I'm used to running a lot of stick out, but I'm also used to running a whole lot larger diameter flux core wire. So we don't know if maybe the reason that I'm running, that this runs a lot better with a very short stick out is because it's a very small diameter. But a couple days ago when I was picking up some things, I grabbed a spool of Lincoln NR211 flux core wire in 030. And when I use up this Arc Captain wire, we're going to put that NR211 in there. And we're going to see how it compares. And I'm going to see if I can run the 030 Lincoln flux core with a longer stick out. That would probably tell the tale on that. So, but I tell you what, it's doing a great job. And the only reason that I would have to really be concerned about running the stick out so short is if I was worried about it burning up the contact tips real fast. And that's not happening. And I'm running on galvanized. So this is really contaminated stuff. And I'm not burning up tips. So it's going great. The MiG 200 is so lightweight. You know, I was talking to a guy today about how the Arc Captain cabinet, the metal's a lot thinner than what you'd find on a Lincoln or a Miller. And they save some money there. You know, the cabinet is probably not as strong as a Miller or a Lincoln. You know, if you were to drop it a long ways or kick it or something like that, it may not fare as well. I don't know. It's definitely thinner material on the outer cabinet of the machine. But I tell you what, there's an advantage there because it is so lightweight. I mean, picking that thing up and packing it around, moving it around is so nice. And it welds great. And you know, here I am. I'm running that thing through 200 feet of cord. And it's running great. Anyway, we're going to get back on this probably tomorrow. And we'll see what's next. We know we're going to be moving on to installing the seats. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm looking at these risers, and I can see on this one right here, I can see how that's kind of humped up. Shouldn't be high like that. When the seat goes on it, that's not going to fit nice. And then if we get over here to the right, you might see where it's not an issue. That's because I've straightened it. Went down through there with this adjustable spud wrench, and I'm using this like a just something to get a hold of that metal with, going down through there and straightening it out. And we'll keep doing that, because if you don't, when we go to put the seat on, it's going to cause us problems. It's going to be sticking up there. Don't want it that way. It's one of them little things, you know, if you notice that beforehand, you can do something about it. It's going to work out better later. Got seats in place and about half welded today. I think the framing here is a little more bent than the other one. I'm seeing differences. It's not going to be a major factor. I don't think it's worth putting a bunch of work trying to get it perfect. But I see how, if you look down through here, you see how the riser is kind of flush with the front of the seats. And, you know, here the riser is a little bit underneath of there. There's a bit of a lip. Not something that's gonna change anything, so I don't think it's worth putting a whole bunch of work into what it has to do with the bracketry of the structure. And I noticed that some of them are not exactly straight, you know, it's not string line straight down through there. All right, I just used up the last of that Lincoln NR211. The 1 pound spool, boy, it don't last very long at all. I'm hoping I got enough of the Arc Captain wire left to put that in there and finish it up. It looks like I'll at least get this, what I'm working on, done. But what I wanted to mention is when you run out of wire like this, there's this wire that's in the gun. That's the wire that I just pulled out of the gun. The very first welding shop that I worked in, we ran a lot of 045 solid wire through an old Regency 350 power source with a dual drive roll wire feed that sat on top of the machine. Great big CV power source, Miller. And what we did back then, when we ran out of wire, we would leave the wire in the gun, start the new wire into it, just push it in about 6 inches and weld with it. And you'd actually see when the wire that was in the gun from the last spool pushed out. If you were welding and paying attention, you'd see it push out and the new wire come in and weld. And we never had a bit of problem doing that. So we were burning that little bit of wire that was left in the gun. We were able to use that. I don't recommend you do that, and let me tell you what happened to me years ago when I first started using Lincoln LN25 wire feeders. I was doing it that way. I was using that wire that was in the gun, and I did it a few times and it worked. One time I was doing that, and the wire from the new spool of wire passed the old wire in the gun. And it got so stuck that it even caused the liner to get stuck in the gun. It swelled up and it poked into the rubber, and I couldn't fix it. I ruined that gun. I had to replace the entire gun. And ever since then, I pull that out of the gun, that leftover wire when I run out. I pull it out of there and throw it away. It's not worth risking ruining a gun over it. It ain't that much wire. It ain't worth it. 10 feet of wire, throw it away. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, I said, I can't believe it, but I like the Arc Captain flux core better than the Lincoln NR211. Blows my mind. I like this wire better. But I want to give a big gripe about what Arc Captain's doing here on this package right here. And there's a lot of companies doing it. You see where that says flux cord MIG wire? They're using the word MIG. There is nothing MIG about this gasless flux core wire. MIG stands for metal inert gas. With this wire, there is no gas. And these fools use the term MIG for everything that's wire feed. It bugs me. I just want to say that. They're doing it. A lot of people are doing it. There's a lot of flux core machines. There's a lot of cheap flux core machines that are flux core only. And they use the word MIG. It says MIG on the side of the machine. It says MIG on the side of a machine that doesn't even have a gas solenoid to make it capable of running inert gas. No tube, no gas cup, no nothing. Just bugs me. Anyway, getting back to work. BU football practice. Buckhead and Upshur is practicing in the August heat. I remember them days. We'd have 2-a-day practices in August. I stopped playing football my junior year. I played nose guard, like all the way up through. And in my junior year, they switched me to playing fullback. I did have quick feet, but I didn't know how to run the ball. I was no good at it. My prior experience playing nose guard, playing nose guard, your job is to find the guy that's got the ball and try to kill him. And I realized when they switched me to try running fullback, those guys are more skilled than you think. They're not just fast and quick. There are skills involved with running the football and dodging players and knowing how to get through there. And knowing how to get past the people that didn't get blocked. You don't just run, them guys, I didn't learn those things. But I was getting into welding at the time, and I got out of sports didn't even play my senior year, didn't play football at all. But anywho, looky here. The second set of bleachers, upper section, is all done. Pretty much, I don't know about all done, but it's caught up to the extent that we were at on the first set of bleachers over there, where the top section is all done. So the next thing, is going to be probably doing the bottom section of those over there. The boards are already torn off over there, and I can let the guys know if they want to come out and tear the boards off the lower section here, they can. I'll probably do this as a part 1 and do the other as a part 2 on this video. I'd say I got enough video to make one. And there's going to be a little lull in time because I've got some other things I got to deal with next week. And I'll be dealing with that next week and then come back and get back to work on this after those other endeavors are cared for. But I want to thank y'all for watching. This is part 1 of the baseball bleachers, and remember, learn how to work with what you got. That way you always have everything you need.